The activist who set up a fundraiser to help the police officer who killed a teenager in France last week says the French justice system is to blame for the tragedy.
The United Nations says El Nino is here to stay and warns governments to prepare for the extreme weather it can cause.
Controversy continues to grow over the fundraising to help the French police officer who killed a teenager during a routine traffic check in France last week. According to far-right activist JeanMarie Messier, who set up the financial appeal, the family of the French policeman is facing a huge wave of generosity from the public. In just a single day, more than €1 million was raised to help with the legal costs for the family of the policeman. The killing has caused huge tensions and riots to overflow in France. And now, in an exclusive interview with Euronews, Messier criticised French President Emmanuel Macron for laying off the policeman.
C'est vraiment un élan de générosité et une émotion qui a été suscitée dans tout le pays par cette famille qui souffre aujourd'hui de la perte d'emploi et de la dégradation professionnelle et même politique, puisque ce policier a été lâché par le président de la République lui-même, qui est censé être son dirigeant, dès le départ et sans préjudice de n'importe quel élément d'enquête en sa possession.
Messier also says that he would be unwilling to collect funds for the family of the victim as well. He thinks the French justice system was responsible for the tragedy, as they failed to put the teenager behind bars despite being known to authorities. The far-right activist also blames the family of the victim for not looking after him, as well as the victim himself for not obeying police orders.
Si ce jeune avait tout simplement obtempéré, qu'il était descendu calmement de son véhicule en coupant le moteur, il ne serait pas mort. Le fait de ne pas obtempérer aux forces de l'ordre vous fait mettre le doigt dans un engrenage qui, encore une fois, peut aboutir à un drame. En l'espèce, Naël s'est suicidé, ni plus ni moins.
Parties across the political spectrum are condemning the fundraising activity, with Prime Minister Elizabeth Bourne saying it will not help to calm tensions.
D'abord, ce n'est pas le gouvernement qui peut décider ou non de l'existence d'une cagnotte. C'est à la justice, le cas échéant, de se prononcer sur la légalité de cette cagnotte. Le fait qu'effectivement ce soit une personne proche de l'extrême droite qui ait lancé cette cagnotte ne contribue pas sans doute à apporter de l'apaisement.
So far, more than 40,000 people have pledged money to the family of the police officer.
Palestinian families, fearing for their safety, stream out of the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Israel on Monday launched its most intense military operation in the area in nearly 2 decades, carrying out a series of drone strikes and sending hundreds of troops on an open-ended mission. Security forces insist they are not targeting civilians, but many Palestinians say history tells a different story. An estimated 3,000 people have sought safety away from the camp. The crackdown is reminiscent of Israeli military tactics used during the second uprising in the early 2000s and comes at a time of growing domestic pressure for a tough response to recent attacks on Israeli settlers.
צה"ל יצא הלילה לפעולה נרחבת נגד מטרות טרור בג'נין. בחודשים האחרונים ג'נין הפכה לעיר מקלט הטרור. אנחנו שמים לזה סוף.
The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has called the escalation an open war against the people of Jenin. Sounds of gunfire and explosions were heard overnight and Tuesday morning. Supporters of the armed wing of Gaza's Islamist rulers Hamas have rallied in solidarity. Palestinian groups have called for a unified effort to counter the Israeli operation.
At least 5 people are reported to have been injured after a car rammed into them in a busy street in Tel Aviv. A 46-year-old woman was said to be in a serious condition, while the others are understood to have moderate or minor injuries. Local media, citing police sources, described it as a hit-and-run attack. Witnesses said the driver was shot and killed by a civilian. An extensive security operation is continuing in the area. The incident comes amid Israel's biggest offensive in the West Bank city of Jenin in decades.
At least 2 people have been killed and 19 others wounded in a Russian drone attack on the northern Ukrainian city of Sumy. A 5-year-old boy was among the injured. An official building and 2 residential structures were damaged in the attack, reportedly carried out by 4 Russian drones. President Zelensky has called for an urgent air defense system upgrade in the wake of the strike. He says Ukraine does not have enough high-quality air defense systems to protect the entire country. Kyiv insists it is making slow territorial gains and has released footage of troops engaged in night training near Kramatorsk. The Swedes are serving as instructors. Former Ranger soldier Chris Stier is one of them.
Det här är en del av att vara en soldat. Jag kan sitta och prata med dig i en skyttegrav eller på en kafeteria. Så brukar man alltid säga, ja, hoppas vi ses imorgon. Därför att totalt sett, både ukrainer, svenskar, så är jag uppe i strax under 100 människor som jag har känt längre än en vecka som har stupat i det här kriget.
On the Russian side, the Ministry of Defense has released footage of what it says are cruise tanks causing effective fire damage at the enemy's stronghold.
NATO has again extended the mandate of Jens Stoltenberg as Secretary-General of the Military Alliance for another year until October 2024. Stoltenberg, a former Norwegian Prime Minister, has been NATO's top civilian official since 2014. US President Joe Biden said his steady leadership had brought the alliance through the most significant challenges in European security since World War II. His term had been due to expire last year, but was extended then to keep a steady hand at the helm after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022.
The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, has given its approval to Japan to go ahead with a plan to release treated water from the Fukushima plant into the sea. After a lengthy review, the agency said the proposal met international standards and the discharge would have a negligible environmental impact. Its chief said the body will maintain a permanent presence there.
The government decides to proceed with it. The IAEA will be permanently here, reviewing, monitoring, assessing this activity for decades to come.
Some of Fukushima's reactors went into meltdown when the plant was submerged in the 2011 tsunami. The cleanup lasted more than a decade, and the plan to gradually release treated water is still opposed by some of Japan's neighbours. Local fishers and farmers also fear their products may be shunned by consumers. It's official. After a 7-year absence, El Nino is here to stay. The World Meteorological Organization has officially declared the presence of this meteorological phenomenon from the tropical Pacific Ocean, which causes weather disturbances around the world.
The magnitude, the impact of the El Nino event on global temperature is likely to surge the global temperature because El Nino will add up to the anthropogenic warming and likely to increase the global temperature.
According to experts, the onset of El Nino will significantly increase the likelihood of chlorine waves and record-breaking temperatures in different parts of the world. But while in some parts of the planet it will generate severe droughts, in others it will trigger torrential rains and floods. The UN has called on governments around the world to anticipate the consequences of the arrival of El Nino.
Elke Schelling runs a helpline for the elderly. In the summer season, the hot topic is the heat.
And they fear about this day getting hotter and hotter and just not being able to get out because it's too hot. And they tell us they don't know how to get them some food because they can't go out to buy this.
More than an estimated 4,000 people died in Germany from heat last year. The country's health ministry has created a website to try to decrease those numbers. It details what local governments can do to try and help those most vulnerable, including children and elderly people. It is part of a national plan to improve the response to heat waves. The ministry says they are becoming more common with climate change. The government says it is following the example of France. It developed several measures for heat waves after one in 2003 led to about 15,000 people dying from climate change.
Scientists say that cities are especially impacted by heat waves. The dense infrastructure traps heat in, what can lower temperatures, parks and trees.
Climate scientist Diego Rybski says adding green space to cities is not expensive.
Currently the tendency goes into, it's called redensification, so building more filling the empty spaces in the city, and this is then contrary to what we actually need. So we need more of the green space between the buildings, but now the green spaces are more filled with additional buildings.
Germany's health ministry says more projects will start mid-summer. It's looking into sending warnings to people's phones. Units asked the health ministry when such a system would be implemented and why didn't one start before the summer. The ministry said it cannot give a time schedule. As for Elke, she says she feels lucky to be in good health to deal with rising temperatures, but she says she still struggles.
It's too hot. I'm getting weak and I'm getting angry. I'm helpless and I don't like feeling helpless.